Jazz was born in a little flop house in New Orleans, and it just, because people were crammed in there, they spoke 5 different languages, they couldn't talk to each other. The only way they could communicate was with jazz.
That's just not true. The people who started jazz, I mean, we don't know who that person is, but they're definitely all African American. They all could speak English. It didn't start off like that. What's up, GQ? This is Robert Glasper, musician, producer, and this is The Breakdown. First up, Bird. Bird was Charlie Parker's nickname. Saxophone player Charlie Parker, they called him Bird. Everybody back then had nicknames. Back in the 30s and 40s, all the jazz musicians. I'm not sure how a lot of them got their nicknames, but you just call them that, and you're like, why did I just call you Burger? Everybody calls you that, so I'm gonna call you that. The portrayal of how everything looks is spot on. Where the musicians are standing, all that kind of stuff is spot on. A lot of times in movies, they don't have a person that really knows jazz or what a jam session looks like. They have people standing in the wrong place. And the sound is good. You can tell that those are actual jazz musicians playing just by the way they're holding their horn, and when they play, there's certain movements that jazz musicians do. Even when the saxophone player is blowing and how he's moving with different lines. Certain lines are going up. A lot of saxophone players, when they play notes that go up, they go up. And when they play notes that go down, they kind of do that. It's a movement, body movement thing. And the same thing for the bass and the drums. If you're hearing a cymbal, you should be seeing him play a cymbal. So they have all that pretty good. For the most part, it's good. This particular scene takes place in 1939. So the actual style of music they're playing fits the time period. They're playing bebop. It's just the language, like we all have a language. There's Spanish, there's Japanese, there's English. Bebop is the actual language. It's basically how to get from one note to another note through other notes. So it's basically like a maze of notes to get to another note. It's like, so Charlie Parker, he's known as the father of bebop. Bebop was there before he got there, but not at the level. Once he influenced it, it just went to a whole different level. In this movie, people are already playing Charlie Parker language while Charlie Parker's a kid. That's a little bit off, but in real life, there are things that Charlie Parker influenced as an adult. The stuff that those guys are playing up there, the saxophone players, when they're going back and forth, that's stuff that Charlie Parker actually influenced a lot. So, you know, he influenced the music so much that it broadened it so much to where all these other genres will pop off in there. Charlie Parker spawned people like John Coltrane, and John Coltrane really influenced the free jazz movement. You know, and it just goes on and on like a tree. It grows. On stage, you can see 2 saxophone players playing at each other. Like one plays, another plays, they kind of going back and forth. We call that battling. They have that in hip hop. They call it rap battling. They have it in different genres where you kind of just go back and forth and try to cut the other person. Cutting mean like you're trying to be better than that person. Trade fours. Fours is a certain amount of measures. It's like a conversation. It's kind of like sharpening of the swords. One sword sharpens the other swords. The saxophone pretty much has become kind of like the face of jazz. Anything you see that's like, we need something jazzy, most of the time they're gonna get a saxophone player. Because that represents emotion and it represents like romance. I think really because of Charlie Parker specifically, the genre is kind of represented by the saxophone because Charlie Parker is such a huge influence on the genre itself.
What's your name?
Charlie.
Who to play with?
Little Forrest Whitaker, his look and everything, his mannerism, how he walked up and everything is spot on. He kind of walked on stage without having the conversation of what he's going to play. Normally in real life, you're a new guy, you're young. They'll ask you, what do you want to play? But some people are just hard on you and you walk up, they're like, okay, young buck, what you got? Boom, and you better know the tune. If you don't know the tune, you have to act like you know the tune or kind of figure it out. From the very beginning, you see he's already sweating. He's nervous. And that's a real thing. When you first go up and you try to play with older guys, people that's been around, obviously it looks like it's hot in that club anyway, but he is really sweating because that's nerves. Like when I would go to jam sessions, you have to write your name on a little tablet and then they call you up to play. So I'd be so nervous before I went on stage. Now he's just trying to find it. He doesn't know what to do. He's kind of just trying to find his way. And you can slowly see all the jazz musicians on the stage looking like, what is this fool doing? What's happening? Knowing what you're gonna play when you go to jam session is the scary part of going to a jam session, because most of those people in there have been playing for a very long time. So they know a lot of tunes. And in the jazz book, there's so many tunes to learn. Playing was bad because there was no rhythmic component to it. It was just kind of like, the notes looked like my eyes. Like, that's what it sounded like. If notes had eyes, that's what it would look like. But you can tell he can actually play, but the nerves have gotten the best of him because he's not locked in rhythmically at all with the drummer at all. He's going on his own pulse at that point. Just his confidence and his movements and everything is kind of just like he's playing by himself, alone. And the other cats can tell that. They can tell. The note choices weren't making any sense. He's playing wrong notes here and there. Technically, there are no wrong notes in jazz, but there's wrong notes in jazz. In jazz, they say there's no wrong notes because it's expression. It's like there's no wrong colors in painting because it's art. You can't go wrong in art. But there's a difference between playing a wrong note on purpose and playing a wrong note because you didn't know the right note. Those are two different things. They sound different, they feel different. It's a real story. The drummer, I believe it might have been Joe Jones, that did that to a young Charlie Parker when Parker went up to play. And that's kind of a thing you do when the person that's playing isn't dealing. They say you ain't dealing, and that means like you're not really playing well. You're not hanging with the level that's there. That's happened. People stop playing behind you. You're playing and you're not dealing right. You'll turn around. You'll hear literally the instruments dropping out one by one, and you'll realize, yo, I'm playing by myself. I wasn't trying to like sever his head off or anything like that. He threw it kind of by his feet to let him know, hey, I'm throwing this towards you because you're doing something wrong. When you get embarrassed on stage, those situations never leave you. You remember those for the rest of your life. And a lot of times it can make you better because you never want that to happen again. So you go home and you practice and you hope to go back and be better than you were. So then the people can be like, okay, he can play, he can play. Next up, LaLa Land. The jazz band playing on here, it sounds, I'm not sure what the song is, but it sounds like they're playing something from the 50s or the 60s. Particularly that piano line the piano player's playing. That's a very typical kind of sound, jazz in the 50s and 60s maybe, in that era. They sound good. There's nothing like crazy about it. It sounds like something you would hear at a jazz club while you're talking, having a drink, having a smoke, something like that. Very cool, casual, straightforward kind of just tune. The setting's good for that. The musical setting's good for that.
Jazz was born in a little flop house in New Orleans, and it just because people were crammed in there, they spoke 5 different languages, they couldn't talk to each other. The only way they could communicate was with jazz.
That's just not true. That part is not true. The people who started jazz, I mean, we don't know who that person is, but they're definitely all African American. They all could speak English, for sure. It didn't start off like that. I can definitely tell you that. People dispute exactly how jazz came about, the very beginnings of jazz. A lot of people say it did start in New Orleans. And then there are some people who say it started in Kansas. We don't really know exactly, but definitely wasn't like that for sure.
What about Kenny G? I mean, what about elevator music? You know, jazz music that I know.
What about it?
People who don't listen to jazz tend to think that jazz sounds like elevator music. And there's some validity to that. The elevator music that you're hearing, they picked that particular music because it's good for the elevator. It's just something that's kind of cool, kind of boring, because it's elevator. You want to startle people when you want an elevator. Like jazz is like, you know, known more for being instrumental music than it is even having singers. Just the fact that it's just instruments kind of makes people feel like, oh, well, we can put that on and people can talk and do whatever they're doing and it's not going to be too much going on. I mean, if you took a poll and you asked the average person what's jazz or whatever it is, I think most people would think like Kenny G is jazz. You don't really get to hear much bebop in the world. There's so many styles of jazz, honestly. There's smooth jazz, electronic jazz, straight ahead jazz. This is a part of the genre. It doesn't represent the whole genre. And I love Kenny G. I had the Silhouette album when I was in 7th grade. It's all relevant. You know, you just got to kind of know what you're listening to sometimes.
Where I grew up, there was this station called K-Jazz 103, and people would just put on that station when they had a cocktail party, and everyone would kind of just talk over it.
So this is a real conversation people have. She's younger, and she's saying, what about the jazz that I know? And he's more of a history buff, and he's an actual jazz musician, so he knows the history of it. The younger you are, that's what you know about a specific genre. Same thing with hip hop, same thing with R&B. And then you have people who are older who say, oh, well, no, this is not the real thing. The real thing is back here. So that's always been a clash with people and music, for sure. Just understanding that, you know, music changes. You have to just step back and let it do that and acknowledge it. So for certain jazz performances, you kind of go in knowing what you're getting into. Sometimes you are the focal point, and then there are those times where you play and you know your background music. But in this particular instance, it looks like they're just like, you know, at a jazz club, at a bar, and that's just the band that's playing. He's able to talk and hang out and do that kind of thing. It's okay. Because most jazz musicians know what the vibe is when they get to the venue.
Every one of these guys is composing, they're rearranging, they're writing, and they're playing the melody. And now look, the trumpet player, he's got his own idea. And so it's conflict and it's compromise.
So what he's saying right here is very, very, very true about when you watch a jazz band, you're seeing what's happening in real time. There's composition happening, people are writing stuff on the spot. So you play a melody, you play the song, and then everybody takes a solo. And the solo is just your expression of that song, what you're feeling in that moment. And you're watching everybody play in that moment. It's like literally art in real life. It's happening right in front of you when you go see a jazz band and you see how it works. You can see sometimes the conflict between the musicians and working their way out of a problem or something like that. So it's very, very much something to see versus just something to hear.
And it's dying. It's dying, man. It's dying.
That's a real thing people say, like jazz is dying or jazz is dead. And I don't agree. The tradition of jazz is that it changes, that it always changes. Every 10 years, it goes through a change. That's actually the real tradition. So when people, purists, say what you're doing isn't jazz or jazz is dead because it doesn't sound like it used to, they're not really purists. But if you're really purist and you really love jazz, you know that it changes. Ask any jazz purist who their favorite jazz musician is. Probably the one that gets the most votes is probably Miles Davis. And Miles Davis kept changing the music. He changed the music like 7 times. When he died, he was on the brink of doing hip-hop music. I always wanted to be relevant. I always wanted to do music of now. And I always wanted to bring jazz into the next thing, always. So that's literally what the history of the music is. And I think that we're honoring our forefathers of the music by taking what they did and changing it and making it something new. That's what it's supposed to be.
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna have my own club.
Really?
Yes. We're gonna play whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want, as long as it's pure jazz.
Jazz purists, I mean, the term really is they just choose an era of jazz that they really connect with, and they want it to stay like that, and that makes it pure. Pretty much anything before the 70s. Once the 70s came into play, then you got people including electronic instruments, you know, electric keyboards, electric bass, and things of that nature, which changed the style of music, changed the sound. In a lot of people's mind, that's not jazz anymore. Jazz is this. Everything's acoustic. Upright, bass, piano, acoustic drums, some horns. So that's kind of what their thing is. It has to stay like that. If it doesn't stay like that, it's not pure anymore. I actually thought it was a good movie, you know. The problem with it is La La Land was like a musical and it had some cool jazz moments. Because, you know, jazz musicians, they don't like musicals because people think, oh, the musical music, that's jazz. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of like Broadway, poppy kind of stuff. It's not jazz. So I think there was mixed messages and that people were just kind of putting it all together in one. So I think La La Land got some hate because of that. But in reality, if you just look at it in the real way, the jazz stuff was good. I like the intent of the movie. I like what Ryan's saying here. He has his own opinion about the music, and he's just trying to fight for it and keep it here. And it brought a lot of attention to the jazz world, honestly. Next up, Whiplash. That's not a normal thing to just walk on stage. You're not supposed to be the drummer for that particular song. I think he got kicked off of the concert or something like that. And he didn't even wait for the director to count it off. Normally, in the big band situation, the director has to go 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and blah. So then everybody knows where they are. Miles totally skipped that part. It would definitely make any band director angry at that point. When you're in a school, you're going off of what the band director tells you to do. He's counting everybody in. He's bringing in the drums, he's bringing in the bass, he's bringing in orchestra. So you're trained to just do that. Most of these kids haven't been in a jazz club. They don't have a bunch of years under their belt to kind of know how things flow. So you could tell everybody's kind of startled, like, what's happening? That kind of thing happens when you have a smaller group, you're in a club, a jazz club, and you're playing, then you could be like, yo, all right, come in here, and everybody's kind of vibing. But when you have a big band and it's an educational kind of surrounding you, that doesn't happen at all, because everybody's waiting on the director to come in on their part. So it could definitely be a train wreck. For jazz, big band is like, you have a rhythm section, which is like piano, guitar, bass and drum, maybe some percussion. And that means you have like 5 or 6 saxophones in a row, 4 or 5 trumpet players behind them. You got like 15, 20 horns. Bigger the band is, then the word orchestra starts coming into play. A lot of times orchestra means there's strings, but some people kind of use the words together. It could be, they may say so-and-so's jazz orchestra, but it's really a big band. The good thing about this is Miles Teller is actually playing the drums. You can see he's playing the drums. The drums is the one instrument that everybody knows what it looks like to play drums. So for the most part, you can tell if somebody's faking the drums or not, for the most part. Most people don't know what a saxophone fingering is or the trumpet player's fingering. And that beat is not an easy beat to play. He's playing a few different rhythms all over the set. Some cross rhythms happening, one rhythm going into another rhythm. The hi-hat's doing one thing. And he's playing around it. Go ahead, Miles. 3, 4. This particular song is called Caravan. It's a Duke Ellington composition. Very, very, very famous Duke Ellington composition. He was a very famous band director, very famous composer. And this is one of the songs that musicians love to play. It's one of the songs that doesn't do the natural, what everybody does when jazz, they swing, ding, tick-a-ding, tick-a-ding, tick-a-ding. This has more of a 4/4 bass drum, like boom, 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 doom, 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 kind of having like a more Middle Eastern kind of vibe, you know, and more rhythmic than normal. So the beginning of the song is more that vibe, and then in the middle of the song, it goes right to swing. Boom. Da, 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 da. Dun, dun. People love to play this song because it's very easy to kind of do arrangements of this song, because it's not necessarily locked so hardcore into the traditional jazz pattern of swing. This is really a drummer tune, which is why it makes sense they put it in Whiplash, because drummers love switching from this to that, and then setting up, going back, and then setting up, going there. A lot of the song really depends on the drummer's direction. I know some of these musicians in there, so that's one reason why I definitely know these are the cats playing the actual song. You know what I mean? So the actual thing is great. The trumpet player that comes in, they're kind of having a conversation, if you will. And the drums is really holding the conversation together. Very, very, very interesting how that's happening, and that's really what happens in real life. And Miles is holding his own, playing it. I like the fact that they're giving so much shine to the drums. It's not so common that drummers take the leads. There's been drummers that have had their own bands that take leads on a lot of things. And it's an interesting way to look at it, way to hear it. It takes on a different direction, but it's dope, because the drum set in any band really is probably the most important piece. It's the heartbeat. So in a real way, this movie definitely allows you to see how important, you know, the drums are in the band. Went to a high school for performing arts in Houston, Texas for jazz. You know, the drummers didn't have to play till their fingers bled. That's not an actual thing. But our jazz director, he was hard on us. He was hard on us in a good way. That's why so many great musicians come out of my school, because of how hard our director was on us. There's a big band, you know, everything has to be tight. So even in my high school, when we used to do big band, we had sectionals, which means after school, your section would have a rehearsal with the jazz director, just your section, to make sure all of our things were on point. Everything we hit, all the notes were on point and tight. And then we would come together, because everything has to be perfect, precise. Because if you miss a note, if you go early or you go late, you miss a note, it's going to be heard, because everything's so tight and everybody has their own place to play. Directors can definitely hear all the mistakes because they know the music. They probably performed this same chart for years with other bands. That particular director might have did this for 10 years already. So by the time you get here, the director knows it by heart. So any little bitty thing that's off, he knows it. He's ready for you. He's ready, you know. So yeah, got to be on point. Next up, Miles Ahead. No bias or anything, but I did score this movie. So, did I win a Grammy for the soundtrack of the movie? Yes. But none of that has any bearing on what I'm saying about the movie.
You pick up that note in the solo passage, we could add that to it.
And then have them double it when the section plays.
You want me to make a note here?
Yeah, we'll just try it.
This is the movie by Don Cheadle. I gotta say, he did a great job with Miles's voice and his vibe. Even the lingo he was saying, glissandos, and the way he was describing what he wanted with the big band was very realistic and on point. A lot of people don't know he actually is a musician as well. So he knows musical terms, he understands it and all that stuff. So that really made it easy to work with him.
That's in the forte, see?
Yeah,
like we're coming
that's
in.
right.
So.
That's right. And I wanted to sting it, hit it.
Yeah.
And really take it off. Then they got to juke the sound.
Miles Davis, in this scene, he's talking to Gil Evans, who was an amazing arranger. It was a big deal that they were doing an album together. But yeah, some of the lingo he's talking about here, he says, I wanted the sting right here. It's kind of like an exclamation point for horns. Kind of like, or pop, accentuate it, and you play it loud, you play it a certain way. So they call that stinging. Or a glissando, he said something about a glissando. That's when you kind of do a little gliss going into a note. A lot of people kind of that's kind of what you do in that situation.
Yeah.
And really take it off. Then they got to juke the sound.
In jazz, it is common to work with a producer. Depends. The producer can mean certain things to certain people. Some producers don't have anything to do with the music at all. Most jazz musicians produce their own record. As far as the music goes, they're kind of taking care of the music part. Most of them. You have some producers who come in as a producer who are doing other things, but they're not necessarily touching the music, but they're making sure that everything is running smoothly. Studio time, the musicians are there, people are getting paid, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
I'm gonna hold that over the next measure.
Hold that over the measure. Yeah, and then let it resolve.
And then a groove.
Yeah, let it groove. We should get him back in.
Let's do it.
Let's get him back
Thanks, man.
That little chord that Don Cheadle hit right there, that was me. They filmed it beforehand, but I just made the chord cool, made it something that would probably be, something that you would probably hear in this particular setting. I had to do a lot of that in this movie, where the scene was shot already and the musicians were playing already, and I had to come in with myself and another bass player and another drummer and look at what they're doing and make it sound good, but make it look like they're actually playing. So that was a difficult thing to do versus somebody hearing what I've already done and they have to mimic me, but make it sound good.
Let's be musical about this shit. Be wrong, strong, okay? Otherwise, let it out.
Miles Davis is known for his attitude, with the trumpet and without the trumpet. But he always said, it's not the note that counts, it's the person that's playing the note that counts. One person can play a C, and then the other person can play a C, and it sounds like two totally different notes. It's about the confidence behind the note and all these things behind the note. Basically, play it with confidence or don't play. What's also good about this is all of Don's fingerings are correct on the trumpet. He actually learned how to play the trumpet to do this part. It's really cool that he did that. The trumpet is very important in jazz. The role of it is very important. I think it probably stems from Louis Armstrong. I would imagine why it's such a thing, because Louis Armstrong was the father of jazz, and he was so famous, and he sang, and he was like a pop star, but a jazz musician. The two instruments that really symbolize jazz a lot of times is the trumpet and the saxophone. Because of Charlie Parker's the saxophone, because of the trumpet, it's Louis Armstrong. And then after that, you have Miles Davis, who made the trumpet super cool. He made being a jazz musician cool. Miles Davis was like a rock and roll star, but in jazz. Gil Evans had a specific way of arranging things. He just had a sound that no one else really had. How he stacked certain horns against each other. When you arrange, it's up to you how you want to stack things against each other. Where you want to put the sax, where do you want to put the trumpet? How do they blend? All that kind of stuff matters. Gil Evans had just a smooth, cool, laid-back sound. You got Miles Davis, who's already cool in his way and who he is. And then you have Gil Evans that has this cool sound. It was a whole package deal, and they called it Birth of the Cool. This was in like the 50s, like late 50s, I believe, somewhere in there. And this particular way of recording was the way they recorded. Everybody in the same room. You didn't have a lot of separation booths to separate the sound. So that's another reason why you got to be tight, and rehearsal was a thing, because if one person messed up, you had to do the whole thing over again. Unlike now, you can have different people in different rooms and kind of, overdub people and do all these things to make a recording what it is. But here, everybody's in the rooms. Everything kind of has to be hit and quit. Perfect. Miles was more than just a jazz musician. Miles was an attitude. Miles was so influential, and he represented change. He represented no ceilings. He just always wanted to move and try to go on to the next thing. For me and for a lot of my musician friends, for the music, the genre, all genres really, he was the first person to really just say, forget what the norm is, forget what the rules are, and just totally break the rules and repeatedly keep breaking the rules. Rest in peace, Miles Davis. Next up, Anchorman, the legend of Ron Burgundy.
Burgundy, we will be honored if you will play jazz flute for us.
I can't.
Please.
You play jazz flute?
I dabble.
Going to see a show and getting called up to play is actually normal in jazz, for sure. I go there, see people play all the time, and somebody might see me and be like, oh, Rob, you want to play? So if there's musicians on stage and they know one of the musician friends in the audience, a lot of times they'll call them up. So when you have a flute, and that instrument is kind of small, so you can tuck it away, versus if you have a saxophone or you play guitar or something like that, then it's like, okay, it's harder to just jump on and play with someone. For me, if I get called up, it depends. It depends on the band. If the band's not good, I make up an excuse. But if the band's good, yeah, I'll jump on. It all depends on the vibe and, what's happening.
Guys, East Harlem Shakedown, E flat.
That's not an actual tune, but I love the name of it. East Harlem Shakedown. That's amazing. He called the key. So it's not only I'm calling a song that doesn't exist at all, but I'm gonna tell you a key, E flat. It's not an E flat. That's the greatest thing. Normally, musicians know the keys because most songs are in the keys musicians play it in. Most songs are in one key. Like, this song, musicians play it in this key. The key thing really comes into play when there's a singer. There's a vocalist, and then the vocalist comes up and says, let's play this song, but I sing it in this key, because every vocalist sings in different keys. Nobody comes up and says, I only play this song in this key when it's the instrument. But for vocals, you have to change keys a lot of times.
Keep the cymbals splashy, and Jerry, let's take the bass line for a walk.
Keep the cymbal splashy is not an actual lingo that real jazz musicians say. They do say, walk the bass. So take the bass for a walk. They don't necessarily say it like that, but they'll be like, yo, walk the bass here. Taking the bass for a walk means walking the bass, which means making the bass play quarter notes or eighth notes, but basically continuous boom, 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 boom. Not like boom, boom, boom. No real space in between. It's just continuously boom, doom, 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 doom. Kind of like when you're walking down the street. There's also the issue of the microphone. He's walking all over. He's in the bathroom. He was walking through the club. The mic is on the stage, but you can still hear him perfectly clear. The song they're playing, first of all, it's not a real song, and it's not even how a real jazz song would actually go. The sections they're going in is something that was purely made for this score, to accentuate the things to bring to light the things that he's doing. It's following that kind of thing, but a real jazz song wouldn't take on that kind of characteristic and do what it's doing. These guys weren't playing these instruments. This was like a total, mess. They didn't even look like they were playing what you heard, really. And obviously that wasn't even the point. There's a part in there where you can hear the bongos and the drums play at the same time. The bongos are by the drum. It's overdubbed. You can hear there's an actual drummer and an actual bongo player playing separately. The drinking liquids with the flute, I'm gonna go ahead and say that's not a thing. I'm gonna go ahead and say that for obvious reasons. It's not a straw. The lighting your instrument on fire, that's not a thing in jazz anyway. People in the rock world have done it, but not so much for a jazz flute setting. I think they did a good job with this movie in overdoing some of the things, making fun of the genre in a way. Even when it's a jazz performance that's interesting, it's not like this. I wish they were. Next up, Mo Better Blues. That's Terrence Blanchard on trumpet, Kenny Kirkland and Jeff Tain Watts, and some of my favorite musicians in general on this soundtrack. You have Denzel here, who's, cleaning his horn, putting it together, which is the thing that trumpet players have to do a lot. He's taking care of his instrument in the real way, so that's what he has to do. And Denzel really learned how to do that on his own, and he did a lot on his own. I actually talked to Terrence Blanchard about this movie, and he was telling me how he really learned the fingerings to everything, so it looks real, and learned how to put the trumpet, take it apart, and put it back together, on his own after a while, and learn how to clean it for real. The beginning of that song, when it first came on, and they were showing the John Coltrane poster and everything, you heard the rhythm section, but you also heard the orchestra behind it. So that was strings also added to that, which is really cool. Spike Lee also has a lot of strings in the music and his films in general. His dad, Bill Lee, is a string arranger. And so he orchestrated a lot of the strings in this movie. Before this movie, he did all of the string arrangements for the Spike movies. That's kind of a thing for Spike Lee movies. When you hear the music, you hear a certain sound, strings, and that sound is Spike's dad, Bill Lee. That's a total real thing, absolutely. People do that all the time. I do that. Even if it's not thinking I'm in a band, I do it I kind of just noodle, and I do my hands like this, and I kind of just noodle and kind of practice in my head. But I definitely know we can look weird, for sure, doing that stuff. But that's real. Sometimes it's not even about the hitting the notes when you sing them. It's just about you're just playing the notes. And so you really hear it in your head. With Denzel, he's just kind of hearing the notes in his head and kind of like mimicking the notes out loud. But it's not accurate notes, per se. It just helps get the thought out. It could be a rhythmic thought. So it's not even really about the notes, it's about the rhythm.
Clark, what time is it?
1:00 p.m.
And what does that mean?
That means you're practicing.
That's right. It means I'm practicing. And if you know I'm practicing, and you know I don't finish practicing until 2 o'clock, which is for at least another 60 minutes, why are you buzzing my buzzer?
That's also a very real thing. A lot of people have a practice schedule every day. I knew a dude that practiced every day from 1 to 10. That was a normal thing for him. A lot of musicians are like that. I'm on the practice, I'm practicing, and that's all I'm doing. Don't bother me when I'm practicing. I need to practice. Once you start touring, you start working, you got kids, you have real life things all the time, you have less and less time to practice. Sometimes I'll fit in a 10-minute practice if I can. It's not really about how long you practice, it's about what you practice, really. If you can concentrate on something for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just concentrate on it. Sometimes that's better than practicing 10 hours. Because sometimes people say they're practicing 10 hours and they play for 10 hours, but they didn't learn anything. It's really about the concentration, how much you put into the small amount of time you allot yourself to practice.
A certain time to do this, a certain time to do that. Everything's on a schedule, a timetable. Loosen up, tight ass.
Let me explain something to you. Life is short, okay? I need it like this to do all the things I gotta do. I like order.
Order's fine, but you're ridiculous.
There is no clock out time. You don't clock out when you do music. It's 24 hours. It's a part of your life. It's the love of your life. It's hard to fit another person in there. And a lot of times it doesn't work. Sometimes people can find love and it works out. The balance is perfect. That person understands what your passion is and they can know how to navigate with you through that. But a lot of times it doesn't work out because sometimes, you know, music's the other partner. You know, music's your life partner. So it's like, you got to compete with that. It can be definitely hard being in a relationship. Next up, Round Midnight.
Well, it's always about music. And playing the saxophone.
First off, this is Dexter Gordon we're watching here. He's one of the masters of the music, tenor saxophone player, very influential in jazz. And this is him really just talking about real life, about how music in general, when you're a musician, and that's really what you do, it's not just a hobby, but it's really what you do. There's no breaks from it. Even when you sleep, you think about music. You're dreaming about some music. There's a constant thing in your life all the time. I bet this particular part of the movie probably wasn't even scripted. It's so, you know, authentic. And also, let's not forget, the other master teacher, Mr. Herbie Hancock, he scored this film. This was definitely an important movie.
My love is music. And it's 24 hours a day.
Music consumes you because if you're a composer, then a lot of times you're composing based off of what you do in your life. You get influenced by all these different things and you start writing music based on these things. I'm always constantly singing melodies in my mind, coming up with melodies or humming them that come out of the blue, becomes one with your life because that's what one feeds the other. There's so much you have to know. Even to be a bad jazz musician, you gotta be kind of good just to play the music. It just requires so much because it's a music that you improv and you come up with things on the spot every time you play. That's really what the thing about jazz is more than any other music.
I look at my mouthpiece and it's all bloody, but I haven't felt a thing.
For saxophone players with Dexter Gordon, they're playing with a reed, a wooden reed, and so therefore you can cut your lip. You know, I've seen it happen. I've had an injury because I'm always having to have my hands in this position, so I've developed something called golfer's elbow. Whatever instrument you have, you can have a certain, over time, you know, have an injury because of it. Like how he just kind of put it all in one thing. Like basically he's saying his life is music and his love is music. He loves music so much that it's a constant part of his life, 24/7. And any real musician would feel the same. I think anybody feels the same with whatever your passion is. If you're a person that's fortunate enough to find your passion and have a passion, you probably think about that passion all day, all the time. Thanks for watching The Breakdown with me, watching these cool clips of these jazz movies. Appreciate the hang, but I gotta go. So, I'm out.